Oh, hey, you're up. Oh, hey, you're up.
Hit that flying vagina or what?
Oh, hey, you're up.
You're
Oh,
gonna
hey,
die.
you're up.
Again
Hit that flying vagina or
again.
what?
Oh, hey,
and
you're
again.
up. Oh, hey, you're up.
Hit that flying vagina or what?
Oh, hey, you're up. Oh, hey, you're up.
Who's Bill Murray?
Oh, hey, you're up. I'm not sure if you remember my name or not. You were pretty wasted last night. I'm Bubbawheat, and you're listening to my podcast, It's Time to Rewind, where we're in the death days of autumn, covering the Happy Death Day movies one loop at a time. Today, we're discussing the final day in Happy Death Day 2U that starts at 89 minutes and 55 seconds, with everyone waking up in the quantum lab and ends at the end of the movie. Joining me today is my guest, Aleister Sharkwater. How are you doing today?
Doing great today. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Before we kind of jump into this, I do want to ask you what your thoughts are on these two movies, because I know whenever I recruited you to come in for this episode, you said that you had to watch the movies first. So I know that this is your first experience with these movies. So how did you like them?
Now, I did see the first Happy Death Day in theaters. Ironically, I took my girlfriend on her birthday to watch it.
Nice.
But the sequel, yes, the sequel is a very recent watch.
All right. So what did you think of? What's your kind of quick overall thoughts about the movies, and especially the second one?
First one is very well done. I feel the second one, it had a bit more of an element of being over the top. Although I love Trees, it's almost like she was indignant. She had to go through the loop again. just how dare they?
Yeah, I definitely get that kind of feeling. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into this loop. This is really the getting into the end of the movie. We're finally technically out of the loop, and it's interesting that this really takes place chronologically right after the second loop, because that ends with the Sisy device going off, and that's what knocks Tree into the parallel dimension and the previous day. And this is kind of the aftermath of that, of right after everybody got blown away from the Sisy device. And I think it's interesting that just like at the beginning of the movie, we start with the visual on Ryan rather than Tree, just like the movie itself starts with the focus on Ryan. And then we get Dre and Samar and then the Dean. And it's not till the end of, going through the people, we get Tree and Carter.
I like that the first thing she asked was Danielle, and he was just like, "Who?" Kind of like
Yeah.
a stress test. I like that.
Well, and that's also like a great mirror to earlier in the movie, because I think in her second loop in the parallel, she starts off the exact same way. She just looks at Carter and says, Danielle, and he says, my girlfriend, and she's like, parallel dimension, got it. And you can also tell that the other kind of element that ties into the scene, back to the second scene, is during that we kind of see whenever Samar gets thrown back, we see his yoo-hoo spilling in the slow motion, and the first line that we get is him saying, my yoo-hoo.
He grabs it from the couch. I was like, what the heck?
Yeah, and I think it's also funny that everybody else is on the floor, but Dre and Samar got knocked in. Andrea gets knocked into the couch and Samar gets knocked into a recliner. So they get the soft landings where everybody else is on the hard floor.
Definitely. Although, yeah, I don't know much about theoretical physics machines, but thankfully it was just a little knock to the floor and not like the one Russian scientist who put his head in a particle accelerator and got an atom right through his skull.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. I actually know exactly what you're talking about. I read about him, and like he amazingly survived, but he was not the same person after that.
I feel like if you're a little crazy, you survive more. It's kind of like a rock star doing drugs. If you're crazy for a little bit, it's like you're immortal.
Yeah, and I also like that. After Tree knocks Carter to the ground, she just gives him a cute little hi, and then we kind of end this scene with Samar going, saying off camera, "I think I just shit my pants," and then it immediately cuts. It's like the punchline cut to credits.
I was like thinking, is there an after credit scene? Because I was looking at the clock. It did seem like Marvel just affected everything, man. Just
Yeah.
you look at the credit scene, it's just like there's a little time, there's a little extra time than normal.
Yeah. And I do like, I like whenever they have the end, they have the credits broken up into, you have the like animated credits, like the first credits, and then you have the bonus scene, and then you have the full end credits, and then you don't have anything after that. I think that's kind of the perfect, stinger format for me is this way. I mean, I don't mind because I am someone that tends to stay through the end of the credits whenever possible, even before the MCU came out and have all these post credit scenes. But I do think that this is my preferred format to because I think most people are willing to stay during these kind of short couple minutes animated credits because they're interesting to watch. It's not just a bland kind of scroll of names. And so you get the extra scene right after that, and then it's kind of over.
No, I'm glad. I'm happy when they do it, but I feel like I want, even if it's a sequel, I want to get that feeling like the movie's over, the story's over, and then what comes after next, like if there's an after credit scene, it's just like, oh, just a little nugget of like what could be. But I definitely like that sense of closure first. I hate it when movies assume that they are getting a sequel.
Yeah. And I think this one, it could go either way because I get the impression, we were talking about this just briefly before but before we started recording, but that Christopher Landon has announced the third movie, but there's been nothing in the several months since then. So it's still questionable if the third movie is going to happen. But I feel like this end credit stinger, with the DARPA and especially the very end with Danielle, I don't think that's the direction that he would end up going with the third movie regardless. So I don't feel like this is a teaser for the third movie. I think this is just a joke ending.
He said he definitely had a fun idea, and he also teased that maybe they might do like a mini series on Peacock, which I feel lends itself well to the formula.
Yeah, that kind of makes me think, even though I haven't seen it, but I know like Russian Doll is like the series following a time loop format.
I definitely recommend it. I saw episodes out of order, but it definitely keeps you entertained.
Yeah, I'm currently very slowly making my way through Poker Face season 2. So I'm a fan of Natasha Lyonne. So I think I would enjoy her in Russian Doll as well.
I enjoyed Poker Face so much. I actually went back to watch old school Columbo.
Yeah, she really feels like she's channeling Columbo in that series. Even though I think the second season gets really weird. Like not necessarily in a bad way, but that second season is weird.
Now, I like the first episode. You get so used to Columbo, it's like the little twist of like, oh, I don't need to report you to the cops. No, but I go off in tangents all the time. Let's get back to the subject of time loops.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really a whole lot to it. I mean, we already went through the scene, and then we have this animated credits, which I feel like this animated credit sequence is a reflection of the movie itself because it starts with an image, a close up image of the babyface doll mask, or the babyface mask with kind of a glint in its eye, and then it zooms in on the glint, and then the rest of the credit sequence is this like lovingly 3D tour of the Sisyphus device, and that kind of feels like a reflection of the movie itself because the movie kind of kicks off with the hint of the babyface killer, and then that element completely goes away in favor of this sci-fi plot revolving the sissy, and and then the babyface just kind of pops up, just a little bit at the end, but the movie is primarily about this sci-fi concept rather than the psycho killer like it was in the first movie.
When they unmasked the babyface killer in this one, I definitely got vibes because it was Ryan. It was like a different version of Ryan, but I definitely got vibes of. Let me just make sure I got the name of this movie right. Time Crimes. Yes, that's the one. Time Crimes.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I can definitely see that. I don't remember. I feel like I've brought this up at least a couple times this season. Because I did cover that in an earlier season, and that's a great movie. Yeah, but surprisingly, I don't think I brought it up whenever I was talking about that second loop. It wasn't until later in the movie. But yeah, I definitely can see that in this, or at least if you're just looking at the first two loops of this movie.
I am sad we didn't get to spend a bit more time with Ryan. I'd have loved to see a chunk of him getting help with Tree, and Tree's just like, "Oh, you're gonna die a lot."
Yeah, and then he doesn't die again after that. Then it's back to Tree dying over and over again. And something I think I kind of briefly mentioned it a couple episodes ago, but I don't think I really focused on the fact that Tree never gets killed in this movie.
Doesn't she get stabbed her first go around? And because she thinks it's the same old, she kills herself after learning a bit more of the quantum physics?
No,
No?
I mean, I'm pretty sure the first death is that she accidentally falls off the roof while running
That's
from the
right.
killer.
That's right. She was running. That's what I was thinking.
And then after that, she goes straight into the suicide montage where, she has all the different levels of suicide. And then in the hospital scene, she blows herself and the killer up with the gas tanks, but it's her that causes the explosion. So in a way, she's killing herself. She's the active participant in her death. And then in the final one is whenever she drives herself into the electrical substation. So in every death in this movie, it's from her own, it's death by Tree.
Yeah, it wasn't until later I realized we don't see the baby face. We only see them when she goes to the hospital.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a much smaller presence in this movie. It's just like the first loop and then the last two.
I gotta ask, did you call it with the professor? Because I definitely got that vibe the further the movie went on.
I honestly don't remember now. I think I did because I don't think who else it might have been. So I think I probably figured out that it was, or I might have thought that it was his wife, but I can't remember for sure. But I think I'm pretty sure I clocked that it was either Gregory or his wife. And it ended up in a way being both, but it was Gregory that was behind the actual mask. And I don't have a ton of actual credits notes, but I did think it was interesting. And I know that this is typically all just, agents, who has the better agents, but in terms of the actors and the order of appearance or
Mhm.
in the credits, no, obviously Jessica Roth is first, and then Israel Broussard as second, Carter, and then after that, it I think the order is interesting because to me it doesn't make sense because it doesn't really seem like it's in order of importance to the plot because third build is Danielle, Rachel Matthews. And then after her is Suraj Sharma as Samar. And then it's Charles Aitken, Gregory. And then it's Phi Vu, who plays Ryan. So he, as someone that starts the movie, he's what, sixth build in the cast list in these credits.
Definitely should have gotten a bit higher up on there. I have to say though, freaking Carter saying, "Wait, I know where we can hide. Oh, I have a good idea," and then going to the basketball game with almost everyone in the mask. It reminded me so much of that line from the Glass Onion, the Knives Out movie, where one character says, "It's so dumb, it's brilliant." No, it's just dumb.
And then I don't really have too much notes, but I did want to at least mention that the song playing during this credit sequence is Lizzo covering "Staying Alive," which I think that's a fun choice of song, because technically Tree is staying alive when she should be dead because she keeps dying, but then she keeps staying alive.
I clocked the lyrics, but I didn't know it was Lizzo. That is fun.
And then after the animated credit sequence, we get to the stinger, the post credits, and we get everyone picking up trash as an apparent punishment for setting off the device, and we get another technobabble explanation for what happened from Ryan, where he says that Tree was slingshotted back to this dimension, and the vacuum created by the centripetal force closed the loop. Which I think it's fun because that's after Dre says, it doesn't make any sense. Because I feel like Dre is definitely playing the audience at that point.
Listen, after the events and experiences with that device, I got to think you got to go like the professor from Godzilla with the oxygen destroyer. You just got to bury it. It is way too dangerous.
And I also, like, one thing that reminds me of my high school days is the fact that Ryan does say centripetal force and not centrifugal force. Because that's one thing that I remember from my physics class back in high school is the teacher reminding us that centrifugal force doesn't really exist. It's the centripetal force is what exists, and then the centrifugal force is what we feel that's caused by the centripetal force.
Hey, tomato. That's what I say.
And then, I just one little background detail that I don't think that there's any, meaning behind it, at least not that I can tell. But the first piece of trash that Dre picks up is a flyer for Greek casino night for charity. But then we get what I think is such a weird repeat joke of Samar picking up this churro, and he says, "Who throws away a perfectly good churro?" And despite him earlier in the movie, the churro got knocked to the floor in the chem lab, and he was like, "Oh no, it's dirty. It's filled with bacteria." But in this one, he like picks it up and takes a bite out of it.
He didn't even pick the uneaten side. The uneaten side. He picked the one with the chew marks. God damn it.
Yeah, and I wonder if this is actually a really subtle hint that Tree is not actually back in her correct dimension. And this is actually another slightly different parallel dimension where the only noticeable change is that Samar is less germphobic here.
I mean, if that's the only difference,
Well, I
it's
mean,
like
it's the only difference that we see because we only spend like 3 minutes here.
I mean, listen, if I end up in a world where, there was a season 2 of The Prisoner, I ain't going back.
And then, of course, we get the black SUVs pulling up, and we get the men in suits, and they go directly up to Ryan, and they say they're part of DARPA, which is, for people that might not know, it's the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, which is basically a U.S. Agency that researches advanced tech for defense purposes.
Something a direction I thought they were going to go that would have been cool if they had like unlocked like a sarcophagus or a pyramid and then found that baby face mask, like the college mascot mask from there, and, and that would be like, what the heck was going on?
Yeah, but instead we get this high intensity walking scene with them, walking down this big staircase with the kind of intense action music, and he leads them to this giant facility that has their Sissy device, and he says that they confiscated it, but they don't know how it works, and Ryan offers to help, but he says there's too many algorithms. And we get Tree popping up saying she might be able to help with that.
That is, of the trope of time loops, that is one of the tropes that I like. Someone becoming an expert in a field because of all the extra time.
Mm-hmm. And they end it with saying they just need to find a test subject. And again, I love kind of Carter coming out with the voice of reason, saying that trapping someone in a time loop is kind of messed up. And then Tree says, I might know just the right person. And then we get yet another kind of, gag to end the film with just a zoom in on Danielle waking up in bed screaming. And then, cutting to credits. So it's like we get two of those back to back. We get the Samar line and then we get this Danielle line.
Which I thought was messed up because she disliked Danielle because she was cheating on Carter, but that was the other dimension, Danielle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in original dimension, Danielle wasn't exactly the greatest. I think that the two of them were basically like frenemies because Danielle's like the catty sorority sister fake friend to Tree.
There's got to be a limit, though. There's got to be worse people out there to stick in a time loop. I mean, all right, someone's kind of a jerk.
Why not Gregory?
that is true. That is true.
And then we get the real credits, which I didn't really take any notes on the credits, because they're credits. I like to focus on the actual story part, but I did notice one thing which I didn't cover. I didn't look into whenever I covered it in the movie proper. But like at the very end, I noticed the credits of the rights of clips. They credits the first Happy Death Day movie because they use clips from that. They like the flashback scene, and they credits the Creature from the Black Lagoon and Teen Mom 2. And I noticed that they credited My Cat from Hell from Discovery Networks, and that is apparently what the dean was watching whenever he was knitting. And blind Danielle comes in. He's watching just this cat show, and that's apparently the cat show that the dean was watching in that scene.
Did they get the rights to even talk about Back to the Future Part 2?
They don't credit. They do credit Back to the Future because, and I don't think I noticed this either time, but it is one of the posters in Carter's room because They do credit posters of Back to the Future, They Live, Mystery Science Theater 3000, and Repo Man, courtesy of Universal Studios licensing.
Ooh. Oh, I do love Repo Man.
And I did notice the other three, but I missed. I do not remember seeing the Back to the Future poster in his room.
I like that she has not seen any of these movies.
Yes, and I think it's fitting because they're both they're 80s and 90s movies, and she is definitely probably Gen Z or millennial, somewhere in that range.
I
But
mean,
I could easily see her as being too young to have seen either of those movies.
I mean, when I was in high school, I had still seen stuff from like the 70s and 80s. It's classics.
Yeah, but I think these days, especially with with the focus on streaming and phones and social media, that's teenagers and kids, give less time to movies unless they're a movie person or unless their parents are movie people.
Yeah, I was definitely introduced to a lot of 80s stuff by my sisters and a lot of stuff as well from just walking the aisles in Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, Hastings, the golden age, as I call it.
Yeah. And then that's the end of the movie. This is a pretty short scene. It's a 10-minute scene technically, but 5 of those minutes are, well, more than 5 minutes. 5 minutes are the scrolling credits, and then we also have a couple minutes of the animated credits in the middle there. So not a whole lot of actual movie story time in this final scene, or these final 2 scenes.
Hey, it was pretty short and sweet, man. I enjoyed the second one very much, especially I remember the scene she drinks bleach in the middle of the aisle.
Mhm.
Just the reaction of that one customer going by. It was straight out of like a German expressionist film. Just so over the top, the expression.
Yeah, I mean, everything in this movie is so over the top. It at times, I think the first time that I watched this movie, I really enjoyed it. I laughed so hard, through most of this movie because they really dialed the comedy up to 11, I think. But in doing so, they made it, I think, too cartoonish. And so as I've kind of broken it down the way that I have throughout the season, I think it doesn't hold up nearly as well as the first movie, which the first movie is definitely over the top, but I don't think it goes too cartoonish in the way that this movie does.
No, I agree. It still had that slasher vibe to it, whereas
Mhm.
this one, it doesn't have that same sense of danger.
Yeah. I mean, like I like I said earlier, in this scene, she never gets killed by the killer. The only person that gets killed is Ryan in that very first loop.
Which I still can't. It took me off guard. Like, it wasn't until like the reveal, like she's not the target. It was her roommate. So
Yeah, Lori.
Lori, yeah,
And Lori dies twice.
yes, but she did survive the last time, which I enjoyed. It's kind of a way to make peace with the fact she had to kill her in the other world, and it's like, well, at least there's a version where I did save you.
Yeah, and then I think that's really all I have to say. I didn't I didn't think about it. I didn't really kind of prepare any full season wrap up. But do you have anything that you want to say, to kind of wrap up these 2 movies?
Um, I'm drawing a blank as well.
Yeah, I mean it's been a lot of fun. I think that the first movie definitely held up a lot better to breaking it down in this format. I do still like both movies, but I think the first movie I would still give it's like 5 stars, 5 out of 5. I am, and for me I don't look at that as being a perfect movie, but I think it's just a fantastic movie. And the second one, I think for me drops to about 3.5, 4, probably 3.5. I think it definitely suffers from the change of tone. I mentioned it earlier. I don't think that Christopher Landon is as strong as a writer as Scott Lobdell, who wrote the first movie, and then in the second one he kind of took over, and I think the movie did suffer a bit for that. So, I like his style of directing, and I like his sense of humor, but I just don't think that he was able to tie all the story elements together in a satisfying way as much as the first movie did.
Sometimes it just takes a second pair of eyes on something to kind of put focus on, what can improve things or tighten up the pace. But not to say this was a bad movie, not at all. I had a lot of fun with it. It was short, it was sweet. Still, I cracked up a bunch, and I was happy when she went through the time loop again, but Danielle didn't show up. I'm like, oh God, something else changed. I really enjoyed the little switch up.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was, full of, this movie had a lot of twists in it, and I think that most of them were successful. I think there was just a couple that didn't make quite as much sense, especially whenever you kind of break it down, like, which I talked about throughout the season. But I think the biggest one for me is the kind of unexplained in the final loop where the dean comes in a day early for no
That is
apparent
right.
reason. But yeah, that wraps up another season of It's Time to Rewind, and I am going to be going on hiatus here. I'm not sure exactly how long it's going to be. I am fairly certain of what I'm going to be doing for season 8 of It's Time to Rewind, which even though the number doesn't quite match, I don't want to wait I think 4 more seasons to do this, but I'm centering the season around the number 12.
Uh-huh.
And that is mainly because I heard about this game whenever right before it was coming out, and I purchased it a few months ago, and I still haven't played it, but I want to play it and discuss it. And the game is called 12 Minutes,
hmm
and it's kind of a top-down time loop with uh, the voice talents of Willem Dafoe, James McAvoy, and Daisy Ridley.
Oh.
And so I think that's going to be fun. I believe I'm going to be doing this with Rabbit Hole podcast member Jason Soto. I believe me and him are going to be going through the game and discussing it one loop at a time. So I believe we're at least going to attempt playing and discussing it this way, where we each do one iteration of the time loop, record an episode, and then do that until we complete the game, or until one or both of us completes the game. I haven't played it yet, so I'm not sure exactly how it goes. I believe each iteration of the loop takes roughly 12 minutes of gameplay, so I'm curious how that's going to happen. But I decided that I wanted to do that, but I also wanted to add something a little bit more traditional. And I've been thinking about doing the movie 12 Monkeys, the entire
Oh.
movie at a time, and
Oh.
doing that movie 12 different times with 12 different guests. So, discussing the entire movie 12 times.
Not only do I like that, but you also have the option of doing the show.
Right. And so I thought, okay, so I might as well add the series in as well, and then there's also a short film and a movie that actually came out before Groundhog Day called 1201. So I'm like, okay, that seems like a good thing. Let me add that in there too. So kind of the whole season centered around the number 12. And then there's also 3 different Christmas movies that have the number 12 in them. I may or may not group those in. I think that it depends on if I want to even discuss them at all. But Depending on how bad they are. I think there's one that's called 12 Dates of Christmas, and then I think there's two that's like 12 Days of Christmas. And I believe all three of them have some time loop elements to them. I have not watched them. I have not even read a full plot synopsis. I think Kelsey Grammer is in one of them, but I do know that they are, related to time loops in some way. So this is going to be a big season revolving around the number 12.
Hey, you also got the option of the movie It's a Wonderful Knife.
But I don't, like I said, I don't have a timeline. I haven't even started playing the game 12 minutes, and that's kind of where this season is most likely going to start, because I feel like that's going to be the easiest one to dig into. But we'll see how it goes. But for now, this is the end of this feed for right now. The end of this season. It's been a fun season. I'm really happy that I talked to Rob Mello and Scott Lobdell, and thanks to everyone that I've talked to this season. It's been really fun talking about these two movies, and especially coming to them new myself. I had just watched them for the first time just a couple months before starting this season. But thank you, Aleister, for joining me on this final episode of this season. And why don't you take a moment and let people know, if you've got anything else going on or where you can be found online.
I can be found on Threads, Aleister Sharkwater 2752. I host weekly horror watch parties every Sunday on Discord, and I may have a new podcast coming up. We already have a first episode recorded and plan to do 2 more this week, including a review on the upcoming Scream 7.
Nice.
By the way, I got to tell you, I like your style. You need a partner in crime for any of this, you let me know.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for listening, and until next season.
Who throws away a perfectly good churro?
Oh, no, don't.